Welcome to the Production Talk podcast with me, Jan of mixartist.com.au. In this podcast series, we celebrate the modern way of producing music. We want to talk about all things related to songwriting, recording at home, and music production. So if you produce your music at home, this is the place to be. Please subscribe and recommend this podcast to all your friends. This is the Production Talk podcast, episode 5. Thank you for tuning in again to the Production Talk podcast. It's great to have you on board again. Today, I'm taking you with me on a little drive out to the Byron hinterland, deep down into the Australian rainforest, where I met with my dear friend Jesse of the Jesse Morris Band for a really exciting interview. Jesse is the singer, guitar player and bandleader of the Jesse Morris Band, and they just finished the production of their third album, Children of the Sun. So it's a very exciting time to talk to him about how this album was produced in the midst of a global pandemic. So let's jump straight into this interview with Jesse Morris. So today we're now at my friend's Jesse Morris house. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome, Jesse.
Thanks, Jan. I think you picked a good time when my 2 magic children have gone out to a swimming lesson, and it's a rare moment of near silence around the house.
Peace and quiet.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Jesse, thank you for making time for us. Would you mind to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your musical background and your musical career?
I mean, I've been living in the Northern Rivers for nearly 8 years now, but before that, I'm from the inner west of Sydney, where I grew up. I grew up in eastern suburbs in Mascot, and then did my high schooling at Newtown Performing Arts in the inner west. And my dad's a Sydney blues musician, so I grew up in a house that had a recording studio, and
nice.
And he was a guitar teacher, so there's lots of guitars around. And I'm left-handed, but I play right-handed guitar because there was lots of right-handed instruments in the house, and so
yeah, right.
It's probably a budget decision there to teach me that way, I think.
Have you ever tried to try left-handed guitar?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No, okay.
Yeah.
It's no muscle memory for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sydney was my first gigs, where I had my first bands there, and, spent 10 years playing with some of my dearest friends. We still do some musical projects together still. But then I had a long travel in the middle of that and ended up here and found some wonderful musicians to play with up here that have become some of the best friends in my life also now for the last, 7 or 8 years.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, the Northern Rivers is definitely a musical breeding ground, isn't it? There's so much creativity and so many. It's like a hub, like a musical hub where everything just connects. Yeah?
Totally.
Can you tell us about your band, the Jesse Morris Band? How long have you been together, and how did it all start?
Yeah, well, when I was first forming a band up here, I formed it with one of my musical brothers, Rob Damassi. And Rob Damassi and I were doing some duo gigs and looking for a bass player to sort of grow that. And Tom Kelly found us via a friend connection, seeing that we were looking for a musician. And Tom's been playing now with me for about 6 years. We're pretty sure we've done over 1,000 gigs together. Even in amongst COVID, we started to get some gigs again recently, and we just did 3 in the last 24 hours. And so we've done a lot of gigs together, Tom and I. And Rob played with us for a couple of years, but he's travelled on across the world, and he's now down in Melbourne. I've had heard a lot about Hugh Jones as a drummer and seen Tom and Hugh play together, and they're a real rhythm section to be reckoned with. They're the powerhouse. And so, we got Hugh as a drummer maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And the Magic Sisters, Chelsea and Eleanor, local horn players, we met along that journey. And Marky Power, he was our live dubs mad scientist. I met in Federal.
Yeah, right. That's where I live, and we just had Marky on the podcast.
Sure.
So he's an absolute legend.
Yeah.
Part of the bigger musical family here. Okay, so have you always been into reggae, or have you experimented with other genres as well?
Yeah, I've played lots of different genres, mostly in the roots music space. My dad's an old blues player. That sort of 1920s fingerstyle stuff is really his area. And so there's been time in my life when I've really focused on some finger-picking, old-timey blues stuff, which I really love. And some of that's come out in some of the music I've released. But I think, my mum listened to soul and, she had all the cool disco and soul albums and probably introduced me more to that side and funk and things. And Dad more had the blues and rock and roll stuff in his record collection. And I think that, when I first heard reggae music when I was, 12 or 13, some good stuff. And, that sort of married those genres together for me and made sense, the messages to all people and it's, powerful, positive messages. I remember being 13 and playing in a high school band and we had a little repertoire of Bob Marley songs that we used to froth on then. So that's probably I think how reggae found my life.
That's where it all started. And how would you describe the Jesse Morris Band today? What's unique about your music?
Sure. Well, I think every bit of music is unique in itself. But, I don't think of us as a reggae band. I just think of them as songs, and I think they're songs with derivatives of African and Caribbean influence is probably the strongest influence on my music, and a lot of the guys that I play with, their music rooted in African and Caribbean roots. But
Are there any artist names you could drop at this stage? Any of your personal heroes?
Sure. I think that, I really, this last couple of years, listened to Midnight a lot, and
I love Midnight.
And that's sort of, something that I've only had snippets of in my life, but now it's like I'm converted, just those rhythms, those hypnotic rhythms, but records that I love listening to are probably more like, Fela Kuti.
Yeah.
It's probably stuff that I found in Dad's collection early and still have on my record collection now, and, really African influenced stuff is probably stuff I really froth on.
Beautiful. And you're the singer and guitar player and the band leader and
Yep.
Of the Jesse Morris Band. And just tell us about your instruments. What guitar do you play? And have you got a selection? Which ones do you prefer?
Sure. Well, mostly it depends on the shows as to what the guitars are that I'm using. But I've got a pretty magic, locally made Weave electric guitar, which is Clem, which is made from some camphor and some scrap timbers, and I really love that guitar. It's become part of my life now, and it took a while for really gel, but now I love that guitar, and I probably use that more than anything else. And it's sort of a telly copy with a humbucker on the front pickup, and
nice,
and a Bigsby on the back, and I'm starting to love that guitar. And acoustic guitars, probably what I've played the most, over the years, and there's a wonderful Australian guitar maker called Gerard Gillet. I've got a couple that have come out of his space, but they come via Dad. One of them's sitting there, which is it's actually a Michael Pemberty, which is one of the guitar makers at Gerard Gillet's place, and it was handmade in 1983. And I've got a Gillet sort of bigger body guitar that was 91, handmade, and I've had that for about 20 years now.
Wow.
So they're probably the two special acoustic guitars. But I got a Magic Japanese guitar, a Yiri, that was handmade the year I was born in 1981. And it's
phenomenal.
And I've just had all three of these repaired this year and sort of brought back to how they should sound. And I just feel so good about them now, actually. Thanks, Clem.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. Good. So you've got a couple of records out, and I think you're now in the middle of on the finishing stretch for your third album. Is that right?
Yeah.
Just tell us about how this album came together, and then came COVID, and I'm sure that threw a spanner in the works.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah,
with this record.
At the time of us sort of starting this record, we had the material written. We're just sort of looking for the space and time. I was doing some work for the local legends at One Vision, a local not-for-profit who sort of make hip-hop music and music videos with at-risk youth at schools, and they're a bunch of local legends. I was helping them out in their office a few days a week. couple of days a week, and we traded some time for some studio time. And so sort of made a decision for the next thing we're going to release that we wanted to work with Paulie B up at Yamanui for the mix, but that we would track locally with our local crew. And then opportunity for the studio came up for me to trade some time for that. And so a couple of weeks free during school holidays when nobody was going to be in there, we could use that time. And then we just needed someone to come in and track the drums with us. And we rang you, Johan, and you were in Sydney. And then we rang Nathan Stamborough and a couple of other brothers locally, Eric.
Yeah, big shout out to Nathan.
Yeah.
Legend.
A couple of legends and Eric as well. And luckily our friend Jarrah Kurth was free. He's a wonderful drummer for the band Sun Salute, plays drums with us sometimes. So we got Jarrah to come and track those drums with us in One Vision. Rhythm section there, got some really good takes. You know, we spent a few days solidly on it.
How many songs did you record there?
6.
6 songs. And how many days in the studio did you spend?
We did 4 days on drums and bass. You know, with 1 day for setup and then another 3 days of tracking. Not
basically means 2 songs a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not full days, more like, you know, full days can be a bit trying. We try not to do that anymore. More like sort of 6 hours, 6 to 7 hours.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And where were all the other signals recorded? Now we just had a listen together, and obviously I heard guitars and keys and lots of percussion and horns and backings and vocals and probably a few things I missed. Dubs, of course. Where was all that produced?
Yeah, well, we still got the horns in the big studio just before COVID, and most of them, nearly all the lines in, and we used some specific gear that was in there, and then COVID kicked in, and we had to think about recording the rest of the horns, the vocal parts, dubs, keys, guitars, and, you know, all of a sudden we're all in our home spaces. And so we moved into home recording spaces for all those from our various studios, from all of us players. I managed to borrow some of the gear that I was using in One Vision to make up for some of that time because they weren't using the studio, and so I had access to a Focusrite ISA 1FF, one of those. It's like a single channel out of their, you know, Epic desks in the one unit, which I think was just becoming a real highlight on the recording. So I'm very lucky that we got to use that.
That's one lovely preamp.
Yeah. So yeah, from here at home, we were using 414s mostly, and I've got a 214. But
which you're using right now, by the way, and it's a lovely sounding microphone.
Yeah, they're great, especially for that price range. It's just, you know, if you're only doing things that are going to be fairly close and, you know, 180 degrees, I think it's a good mic. But I was able to borrow the 414 from there as well because nobody was using it, so I had access to that Focusrite ISA and the 414 for a few weeks, and so I just got straight into recording pretty much when I was at home.
Literally right here where we are now in this room.
Yeah.
And you recorded all the vocals there?
Yeah, vocals were done here.
And I guess your guitars as well?
Yeah, guitars were done here.
I forgot to mention earlier, which amp did you play for this album?
Well, I've got a Supro sitting under that bag there I've been really loving the last couple of years. It's just super bright, strong, plenty of headroom, clean, no noise. But halfway through recording here, that actually started to play up. And I replaced all the tubes, waited for the slow mail to happen, you know, and it wasn't. I borrowed some off TK and waited for more to turn up, and it didn't fix the problem. So I know that anywhere I'm going to send that amp to get fixed is going to be a couple of months away, and during COVID, probably even longer. So I ended up borrowing a Fender Princeton and trying that out.
Lovely.
And then I ended up buying one to finish the album in the end because I liked it so much. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to borrow it for a month or so. So I've got a Fender Princeton now that I really like.
Fantastic.
Good for recording.
Yeah.
Small size and, you know, it's got that beautiful Fender reverb. So most of the skanks on the album are done on the Supro, and a lot of the sounds are done on the Fender Princeton.
Fantastic. And where were the horns recorded? At your place as well, or at Chelsea's house? Or
yeah, the finishing of horns was done at Chelsea and Tom's place. And they've got some nice mics and some good production gear. I'm assuming they're going to be on one of these podcasts.
Yeah, I haven't asked Tom yet, but sooner or later, hopefully.
Sure.
I'll get him in front of a microphone. There's probably a lot to discuss.
I think so.
Nice one. Good. And we just, had a listen just before we started this podcast, and it sounds phenomenal. So whatever you did there, you nailed that in every aspect. So I really can't wait for the album to be out. Is there a release date or at least a rough idea? Have you got a rough idea?
There's a rough idea, but I mean, it's difficult to make those release date plans at the moment because for us, the release date, we want to tour with it, and so I think we're going to hold out to probably midway through next year, towards the end. Yeah. We'll release a couple of the tunes in the new year.
Okay.
So there's at least a single or two, and we'll start working on other aspects like, some film clips and some remixes. And I think we'll hold out dropping the album until midway through the year so we can go and play some places where people can dance, when people are allowed to dance again.
Absolutely. It's very danceable music, definitely. Can you tell us a little bit more about your home studio? How would you describe, the gear and this room to the listeners?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is just a room in my house. It's the spare bedroom that's always my music space and my little office space where I would practice or plan gigs or hang out with the kids and play music. And it's a room in my house, right in the middle of the house, in between all the rooms everywhere. The beautiful thing about it is that the window opens up and I can see outside into the rainforest, and that's quite magic. And definitely where I am, there is no roads nearby. It's a kilometre down to my driveway, so that does help. I think that the obstacle of having to magic young children for my partner and I is that the house is often not so quiet. So I do a lot of the music work here through the night.
Okay.
And that's sort of workable because my family will sleep a few rooms away in the house.
Yeah, right. So you need to constantly balance the noise levels and
so that's probably an obstacle, but a lot of good creative things come to me at night, so that works.
Okay,
that's not a bad workflow for me. And the space itself, after I borrowed that ISA one from the One Vision crew, I just fell in love with that as a tool. And for me, I'm mostly going to be recording one thing here. I think I'll only be recording one thing. So I think I ended up buying one, to finish the album because there's still more things to do and I wanted it to match up. And I thought that's a piece of gear I'll probably have for 20 years. And so I've got a Focusrite ISA, which goes out into my PreSonus AR12 desk. That sort of does the digital conversion, and then straight into a MacBook with Pro Tools on it. And that's my process. It's pretty simple,
Which means that you actually had to be the musician and the creative and the songwriter and the producer and also the engineer all at the same time. So you're probably wearing quite a few little different hats.
Sure.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, I think I wouldn't say that. I would say that I was one of the tracking engineers. That's probably what my credit could be.
Well,
because I'm definitely making sure that it gets into the hands of producers with your level of skill, Jan, to finish the albums. Because I know that I can track some things, but I still think that even in all this process, it's still worth honouring those that have spent their time with those instruments a bit longer to take those things that are tracked. I think getting a good sound through a good mic and a good preamp is achievable, And I think some of the rest of the stuff that comes in with producing takes time.
I couldn't agree more. Look, in my books, it's all about getting it right at the source, and it all comes down to the performance. So once you've got this magical moment where the performance is just spot on, it almost doesn't matter what microphone it is. Almost.
Sure.
I usually find that most things you can fix later with plugins and software. The only thing you can't fix is performance, and once you've captured the performance, that's just where the money is. So I'm just looking around here. It looks like this room is almost cube shape and no acoustic treatment. Which,
right.
If you go by the books, is the worst sounding room possible.
Sure.
And you still manage to produce a fantastic sounding record in this room.
Yeah, I think that the vocals, I've got a little vocal screen that's, it's tiny. I mean, that'll be 40 centimetres by 30 high, and it's a cheap one. But that does enough of a job to be able to sing into, and I put that in the corner there, in the corner of the room, that little vocal screen, and For the guitars, I like that the bit of the room reverb that's on there. You can hear it, you know, and I actually really enjoy that. So I'm okay with recording those things. I think if we tried to do horns in here or something that was, you know, super bright, we'd have to put a little wall up or something. That'd be tricky. But yeah, it worked for vocals and guitar.
Oh, fantastic. That's really good. And do you remember what microphone you used for the guitar cabinet?
Yeah, I used the 214 on the guitar cabinet, yeah.
Yeah, okay, for all of the takes and then also for the vocals?
The vocals I had that 414 borrowed, so I continued using the 414, except for a few harmonies at the, that I added in later when I no longer had that. I used the 214.
Did you sing all the harmonies yourself?
Nope, harmonies were majority Tom and Chelsea and Eleanor. Yeah, Tom and Chelsea recorded their parts from their home. They lived together during lockdown, and then once they were allowed to have visitors legally again, and Eleanor came around and recorded hers there too, actually, because Eleanor she was in the middle of moving and she doesn't have a studio space at her place at the moment.
So basically one studio at One Vision, which is a fairly basic studio, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, they've got a couple of really nice pieces of gear, and a treated room and a control room. So it's sort of a 2-room studio.
It's small in size.
Yeah,
and,
you just fit the drum kit in the tracking room, and so we did bass in the control room and guitars. I did in the kitchen just outside the studio.
Okay, and then the rest was literally recorded either here or at Tom's place.
Yeah,
in 2 other home studios,
and also down in Coffs Harbour.
Marky added some dubs.
Yes, so Marky had live dubs on all vocals, snares and horns, and he's in Emerald Beach down on the Coffs Coast there.
Lovely place. Good. Say, there are probably a lot of musicians out there who are in the same boat. Have you got any advice for them when they're struggling to produce at home? Any suggestions and advice to share?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, having one good preamp, really simplified the process, and you're not trying to use the mixer or the external sound card and then using the gear that's in there later. That one good preamp just does all that, straight from the signal in. I think that's a good tool to have. And I've always been a believer in just having one good mic that's the mic that you use. It's consistent across all of those things, So one good mic, one good preamp is really all you need. Definitely.
You tracked it all without any additional gear like compressors or so it was just literally a microphone, preamp, then now through your mixer, converted and straight to Pro Tools?
Yeah.
Okay. And please don't take any offense, but how old is your computer? Did it run through okay? Or did it play up? It looks like it's an older model.
I've got a MacBook Air, actually. I've got a Mac Tower behind you that I love that computer, but I'm going to be talking to you about it after the podcast about where we can get it fixed. Yeah.
Okay, definitely.
I need it back in my life.
We can do that. We can definitely do that.
But even that's 2015. The tower. But
that's fairly recent.
I want to get that back working. The MacBook Air it's not that old actually. I think it's 2016.
Oh, okay.
But it probably looks like it's a bit older because it's often sits in the bag traveling around. Yeah,
right. Okay.
And
but a computer.
But the rule of thumb is you don't use MacBook Airs to record with, though, right? And I actually have had little to no problems using it.
Yeah, there you go. You proved everybody wrong. And you pulled it off.
But I am aware that, as soon as I start dropping some plugins into Pro Tools, things can change quite quickly. But again, it goes back to my method of I prefer to let other people mix my tracks, and I come up with ideas here. I can track them, and comfortable with that. But I leave the mixing to an engineer.
Okay, that's definitely a wise idea. Can be very frustrating to mix if you don't have that experience yet.
Yeah, the experience, and I think also for my own process is also, having another set of ears away from, someone that's written the songs and also then tracked them all and had the same listening ears that whole time through that. It's good for somebody else to depart not only their knowledge and wisdom, but also a fresh listen,
Okay. And was Paulie involved early on in the project, or did you just, record all the songs start to finish and then dumped all the files on him, or did he, give you some input on the arrangements and, whether there were any verses to be dropped or anything like that?
No, we had reached out a couple of times over the last couple of years and just been around Paulie at festivals and things and had said, we need to do, super keen to do some tracks with you. And, he was keen and just had to find the space and the time. And so we just connected that we wanted to track ourselves and, they're written, finished songs and that we're looking for him to do the mixes of our tracking and whether he'd be happy to work like that. Because, I wanted to make sure that we also, honour a process that he was comfortable with, and he said he was going to be happy to, because he, heard the songs and knew that they were finished songs, ones that we'd written, performed and played and, and ones that people knew that he was happy to take them like that, us to track and he would then work with them from there. He's made some nice calls and adjustments and dropouts in places we didn't have a dropout in and has done that sort of additional production that that I also wasn't expecting. That's really made things a little bit more special that we've already adopted into our live show.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think the decision to work with Paulie B is also just, he's worked on a lot of albums that I really like, really dig, things like Kingfisher and that Magic Bobby Alou album that's, that I'm frothing on at the moment. Really like his work and his playing, he's a good player, Paulie.
Yeah. Amazing. Do you mind sharing whether the songs were recorded on a click or not?
Yeah, we record with the click.
Yep.
Yeah. I think partly it's because all of us are just used to that, and that's something that we've done a lot of. But also we want to be able to use these tracks in the environment of sharing with our electronic music producing friends, and we want them to be able to be remixed and different versions and stems. And so I think if you got plans to do other things with them, and there's also other opportunities that come in, to do with people that create other content and being able to use some of that material in those spaces. If you want to do that, it is a lot easier if it's recorded to a click. But also we've done a lot of recording that way, so the process feels a bit more comfortable to us. And a big thing from listening to so much Midnight the last couple of years is I just want out. That's a big thing for me, is that, really nice, precise timing.
I listened to only 2 songs earlier today and they sounded really tight. Now the rhythm section is just perfectly locked in and literally can't help yourself but bob your head, there's no stopping that. Cool, fantastic. So where would people be able to find out more about your band? Where can they go to listen to your music, and where can they buy the upcoming album?
Sure. Yeah, we normally direct people to Bandcamp. When you look up the Jesse Morris Band on there. Our last album that we made with you, Jan, and thank you, brother.
My pleasure, mate.
And we've got that available on all the places. You can go just about anywhere to find that, but we prefer people to go to Bandcamp because the money gets more direct to us. And you can get it on Spotify and all those other places. But Spotify isn't always the best place to support local bands.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And Spotify is also not the best sounding place to go online.
Totally.
There are definitely better places to go. A couple of months ago, I went to see a friend in a studio in Sydney, and they had a Tidal on that computer, so we just wanted to listen to some music, and I just opened up one of the songs from The Shakedown, which is your previous record. And I was just really amazed to see how under critical studio conditions it actually sounded exactly how I expected it to sound. And you don't necessarily get that from Spotify, unfortunately. I wish they would improve the quality, the playback quality a little.
Sure, and Tidal does that, hey?
Tidal is definitely the winner for me between those. Amazon Prime is definitely very nice. but there are also a lot of players online, streaming services that actually sound really shocking. And SoundCloud is one of them.
It's interesting how widely SoundCloud gets used,
Of course,
but the quality is low. What was the studio that you were visiting?
That was Forbes Street Studio. They are associated with Universal, and they do a lot of hip hop and pop productions there.
Okay, nice space.
It's a lovely studio. It's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. We recorded some videos there. So
cool.
There's actually videos on YouTube. Maybe I could put.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of your series. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was just mumbling on about compression or something like this in that studio.
Yeah, I remember seeing the space now. Yeah,
but
cool.
That was a phenomenal studio. So great space to be in. And your record sounded great on those speakers. So that's really good to see if you choose the right player.
Sure.
I reckon.
Title, okay.
Yeah, Tidal is not the most popular one. Definitely not. It's a bit of an underdog, but to my ears, it definitely sounds better than Spotify by a long while. Yeah. Good. Have you got a website where people could buy merchandise directly from you?
Yeah. jessymorrisband.com.au, and you can link to that from social media, and you can find some of our current stuff, T-shirts and CDs and things. That's probably the new album will be Bandcamp, and it'll be via our website. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for your time today. Pleasure to talk to you, and I wish you all the best for the upcoming album. It's exciting times. You've already sold a copy to me. I'm going to buy it, no matter what, that's for sure. And, I've listened so far, to 2 songs, and they just blew my socks off. So can't wait to hear that. And I will definitely make another announcement once it's out to our listeners so everybody knows. Thank you for your time today, Jesse.
Thanks, brother. Always a pleasure to hang out with you. Bless up. Blessings to the family. Cheers, huh?
You probably noticed that we recorded this interview before the release date of that album was known. By the time you listen to this podcast, the album is actually out, and you can just follow the link to the show notes and click right there. Alternatively, just go to jessymorrisband.com.au or find Jesse Morris on Bandcamp. Thank you very much. So that means we have reached the end of this episode. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. That means the world to me. Also, thank you very much to Naren of Alchemy Audio, who helped out with the editing of this podcast episode. You rock, man! And also thank you to all the listeners who filled out the survey that I published last week. I would like to give it a shot for the next few weeks. I will increase the frequency to weekly, which is quite exciting. I'm not quite sure if I'm up for the job because I'm actually very busy mixing music and looking after my family. But I definitely want to give it a shot. So for the next few weeks, I will release my podcast weekly, and then I will reconsider and see if I can keep that up. Thank you very much for filling out the survey and all the encouraging words I've received. I really appreciate this very much. I'm taking the survey offline now, and I hope you'll join me again in a week's time. Thank you. Bye for now.